You know, when you walk past uh, a massive skyscraper, like in the middle of a modern metropolis,
Right.
there is this fundamental assumption you make. And you do it without even thinking about it. You feel the shadow of the building, you look up at that sheer vertical drop of glass and steel, and you assume the foundation is solid.
You have to. It's a
Yeah.
biological imperative, right?
Exactly. You assume that beneath the pavement there are these deep pillars of reinforced concrete holding the entire thing up. You trust that the structural engineers actually did their math.
Yeah, that the physics hold up.
Right.
Yeah.
That the sheer crushing weight of the building isn't just about to, collapse in on itself and crush you. You trust the architecture. It is an act of blind faith that you perform every single day.
Because if you didn't, you'd be paralyzed.
Completely paralyzed. But imagine, just for a moment, that you could strip away the polished stone aesthetics. Imagine you could peel back the sidewalk and you saw that the foundation wasn't steel at all. What if it was just painted rust? What if the only thing keeping thousands of tons of glass from obliterating the street below is just like the collective delusion of the people walking underneath it?
Well, that's the thing. What if it stays up simply because no one has dared to point out that it should fall?
Yes. And that is the terrifying space we are stepping into for this deep dive. And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. If you clicked on this expecting a comfortable escape from reality.
Yeah, turn it off.
Seriously, if you want a cozy discussion about heroes and villains conquering evil, you need to turn back right now. Because today we are taking a forensic ledger to a text that it masquerades as epic fantasy.
Right. Brandon Sanderson's Words of Radiance.
Exactly, but it's actually a brutal, completely unsparing diagnostic of human self-deception. Let me be perfectly clear. We're not here to talk about glowing swords or magical armor or noble knights embarking on righteous quests.
No, that's just the aesthetic. That's the glass on the skyscraper.
That is exactly what it is. We are here to extract the hidden machinery, the domination, the status hunger, the collective psychological fragmentation that's operating in the dark beneath the surface. We are investigating a civilization that is meticulously performing stability.
Well, completely internally disintegrating.
Yes.
And, the Altai Society depicted in these pages, it shouldn't be read as some distant, magical utopia, or even just a simple feudal kingdom. It functions as a mirror, and it reflects the darkest, most unavoidable truths about the systems humans build in the real world.
It's completely unvarnished.
It is. If you read this text with any degree of intellectual honesty, it strips away that comforting myth that human beings are fundamentally motivated by virtue. Human behavior at its core, as demonstrated by the power players in this book, is driven purely by survival. Vanity, power.
All the noble stuff.
Everything else we claim to value, right? Yeah. Honor, justice, morality, religious piety. It's just the marketing campaign. It's what we deploy to sanitize our brutality. It's the language we use to make ourselves feel better about the violence we commit just to secure our status.
Which is chilling when you look at the real world. I look at the institutions we trust today, our governments, our financial systems, the digital networks that mediate our entire social reality. And I have to ask you, the listener, how many of them are just a theater of stability?
Most of them. Maybe all of them.
Are we just waiting for the illusion to shatter? Because as we dig into the source material, I'm struck by this incredibly unsettling conversation. It's between the scholar Jasna Colin and her ward, Shallan.
On the ship.
On ship, right. Jasna is royalty. She's literally one of the most powerful women in the world. And she pulls Shallan aside and drops this absolute philosophical bomb about the nature of authority. She says, quote, "Power is an illusion of perception."
Such a devastating line.
It is. She tells Shallan that the sailors on that ship obey her only because they believe the illusion of her authority. She explicitly states that she could be a beggar in rags, and if she could somehow convince those sailors that she was the sister of a king, her power over them would be identical.
It's a profoundly Machiavellian insight. And it is the key that unlocks the entire social structure of the book. Jasna understands a truth that most people spend their entire lives actively ignoring.
Which is what?
That authority does not exist in nature. There is no biological or physical law that makes one human a king and another a beggar. If you take a monarch and a peasant and you drop them in the wilderness, the bears will not recognize the crown.
Wow. Yeah, the bears don't care.
They don't. Power resides strictly and only where men believe it resides. It's a construct. It's leverage and perception. So when Jasna tells Shallan this, she isn't just offering like a witty observation, she's pulling back the curtain on the entire social order.
She's admitting it's a scam.
She is admitting that her wealth, her status, her ability to command men to live or die, it's all just a performance. It's a hyperreal simulation that only functions as long as no one breaks character.
Let me stop you there, though, because I want to make sure we are unpacking the actual mechanics of this illusion. It's one thing to say, power is perception. It's another to see how a whole society gets trapped in it. Like, I'm looking at the Alethi war camps in the text.
Right, out on the Shattered Plains.
Yeah. They are supposedly fighting this existential war of survival against a species called the Parshendi. But the Alethi High Princes, the supposed military leaders like Sadeas, Ravon, Ruthar, Sabariel, they do not treat this war like a battle for survival.
Not at all.
They treat it like an elaborate spectator sport. The text describes how they are competing for wealth in the form of gem hearts, which are extracted from these giant beasts out in the wilderness. The war is just a backdrop. It's a game for status, played by elites wearing silk while their soldiers die in the mud. How does a civilization get to a point where a war for survival devolves into a pageant?
Well, it happens because the illusion has calcified into an economic engine. Think about the mechanics of what these high princes are actually doing.
Okay.
They aren't trying to defeat the enemy. They are trading to out-earn their political rivals. They are taking bridge crews, which is essentially just slave labor.
Yeah, treating humans as disposable stepping stones.
Literally, they use them as human shields to cross treacherous chasms entirely to harvest a biological resource, the gem heart. And this resource is then used to fuel their economy and buy more political influence.
So the war is paralyzed on purpose.
Exactly, because ending the war would mean ending the gem heart economy, which would mean dismantling the very system that grants them their power in the first place. They are addicted to the game, and they mask this cynical strip mining operation behind the aesthetic of a noble crusade.
And then you have Dalinar Kholin, the king's uncle, watching this happen. He looks around at the war camps and laments that Alefkar ended as a kingdom centuries ago. He says, quote, "We are children wearing our father's cloak."
Such a romanticized view.
It is. He's disgusted by the pageantry, bemoaning the loss of some ancient, pure honor that he believes the Alethi once had. But the text doesn't let him get away with that romanticism, does it?
No, it absolutely gets him. High Prince Aladar completely dismantles Dalinar's nostalgic fantasy. Aladar reminds Dalinar that his brother, the late King Gavilar, did not unite the kingdom through honor or noble diplomacy.
No, he was brutal.
Right. Gavilar united the kingdom with, quote, knives in the back and soldiers on the field, cutting the heads off any who resisted. Gavilar understood the exact same truth that Jasna articulated on the ship.
That the bears don't care about crowns.
Exactly. You secure power through violence, manipulation, and terror. And once the slaughter is finished, once the bodies are buried and the throne is secured, then you drape the entire bloody enterprise in the language of honor and unity.
To legitimize it.
Yes, you do it to legitimize the violence after the fact. Honor is literally the paint applied over the rust.
There is this terrifying anecdote in the text that perfectly illustrates how this paint is applied. Years ago, King Gavilar offered High Prince Sadeas a boon, basically a blank check. Sadeas could have asked for land, wealth, anything.
But he did.
No. Instead, he publicly demanded the heart of his political rival Yennev on the end of a sword.
It's so dark.
And the horrific part isn't just that he wanted a man dead, it's that he used the sacred, highly ritualized tradition of the king's boon to sanitize a cold-blooded, premeditated murder.
He gamed the system.
He dueled Yennev, killed him legally under the eyes of the law, and seized his territory. The elite weaponized tradition to justify their unending status hunger. The Alethi society is rotting from the inside out because the elite are entirely trapped in this aesthetic of power. They are performing stability while operating a meat grinder.
And if we map this onto our modern reality, the parallels are, they're chilling.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the systems that govern us today. Our financial markets, our algorithms, our digital clout. They are entirely reliant on collective belief. We live in an era of intense digital alienation and institutional hypocrisy, where the value of a currency or a corporation is almost entirely decoupled from anything tangible.
It's all fiat.
Yes, we are governed by fiat currency and fiat authority. We are living in a form of techno-feudalism veiled as a democracy. Modern elites play geopolitical and economic games for the modern equivalent of gem hearts.
Like market share or data monopolies.
Exactly. Algorithmic dominance. while the underlying infrastructure of civilization just decays. And when trust in these institutions collapses, the system evaporates instantly, and the beggar is revealed beneath the robes.
I'm hung up on the Parshendi, though.
Okay, let's talk about them.
I look at this elaborate, calcified Alethi society, obsessed with rules and honor that literally mask murder. And then I look at the Parshendi. If all this Alethi politics is just the theatrical performance and illusion of power, aren't the Parshendi the only ones operating in actual reality?
I mean,
Well, the text reveals that the Parshendi preemptively assassinated King Gavilar because they discovered he was secretly planning to bring back apocalyptic gods that would annihilate the world. They didn't play the political game. They didn't file a diplomatic grievance.
no, they didn't.
They pierced the illusion with raw, undeniable violence. They murdered him to save the world. Are they the only sane actors in a world obsessed with performance?
In a purely Darwinian sense, yes. The Parshendi acted with supreme, terrifying rationality. They recognized a literal existential threat, and they eliminated it without any regard for the theatrical rules of Alethi diplomacy.
They just did what had to be done.
Right. They traded their entire geopolitical reputation for the survival of the planet. But, and this is the crucial part, this highlights the brutal paradox of power. Seeing through the illusion doesn't protect you from the violence of those who still believe in it.
Oh, right, because the Alethi don't care why they did it.
It's exactly. By acting rationally and killing Gavilar, the Parshendi invited a war of extermination upon themselves. The Alethi didn't care why Gavilar was killed. They only cared that their performance of dominance had been challenged. The Parshendi shattered the illusion, and the Alethi responded by trying to shatter the Parshendi.
So we have established that societal power is a fabricated illusion, a shared hallucination that only holds up as long as no one looks at the foundation. But what happens when that dynamic turns inward?
That's where it gets deeply uncomfortable.
Right, because what happens when the illusion isn't just a political system you live under, but the psychological system you live inside? If society demands a performance to survive, it stands to reason that individual identity must also be a performance.
And this is where the text transitions from a political critique into something, frankly, psychologically unsparing. The concept of identity in this book is violently deconstructed, and we have to examine Shallan Devar to understand how.
Let me set the stage with Shallan, because her backstory is a masterclass in psychological horror. We are introduced to her father early on as this brutal, tyrannical monster who slowly destroyed their family.
Everyone hates him.
Right. But the text eventually reveals a secret that completely reframes everything. Her father didn't act in a vacuum. Shallan herself, as a terrified child, actually killed her own mother to survive an attack.
It's so visceral.
And she didn't just stab her. She used a magical blade to literally sever her mother's soul, leaving her eyes burning out. Her father, discovering this, took the blame to protect Shallan's secret. And the isolation, the guilt, and the societal judgment slowly ground him down until he became the monster everyone assumed he was.
And the mechanism of her survival is what demands our attention here.
How so?
Well, how does a child process the trauma of murdering her own mother?
She doesn't.
Exactly. She completely refuses to process it. The narrative utterly dissolves the modern, comforting concept of a true self or an authentic identity. For Shallan, identity is exposed as a purely compensatory mechanism. It is psychological armor built to withstand the crushing pressure of cognitive dissonance and unprocessed trauma.
I want to break down the actual mechanics of her magic because it's not just a neat trick. She has the ability to project illusions, which she calls light weaving. But I need you to explain this to me like I'm 5 because the source material explicitly links her ability to create these illusions to her trauma. How does that mechanically work?
Okay, so she has a companion, a spren.
Which is basically an entity of pure cognitive pattern.
Right. His name is Pattern, and
Yeah.
he feeds on her lies. He literally consumes the falsehoods she tells herself.
Yeah.
Why is trauma a prerequisite for bending light? Because light weaving in this universe is literalized cognitive dissonance.
Whoa.
To create an illusion that can fool the world, you must first possess the capacity to profoundly fool yourself. The magic system requires a fracture in the soul.
So you could be whole.
You cannot bend reality if your own grasp on reality is rigid and whole. Shallan can weave illusions of light and sound precisely because she has spent her entire life weaving illusions within her own mind just to wake up in the morning.
Just to function.
She has compartmentalized her psyche into sealed boxes. The trauma isn't just a sad backstory. It is the fuel source for her power. Pattern, the spren, is drawn to her because she has a labyrinth of self-deception. When he says to her, such a deep lie, he is admiring the architectural complexity of the psychological wall she's built.
There is an incredibly visceral scene that captures this. Shallan is sitting and drawing, and through her art, she accidentally lets her light weaving project an image of what she actually feels like inside.
It's not a heroic image.
Not at all. It's not a heroic, self-actualized woman ready to take on the world. She draws herself as a huddled, weeping, terrified child, flinching at every sound, completely broken by the darkness of her past. Shallan looks at this projection and acknowledges, in a moment of terrifying clarity, that this is the real Shallan.
The child on the floor.
Yes, the witty, confident, functional scholar walking around interacting with the world, that's a fabrication, a completely artificial construct.
We live in a modern culture that treats healing and authenticity as the ultimate, unquestionable goals of human existence.
Oh, constantly. Live your truth.
Exactly. We are told constantly to find our true selves. This text suggests that in an indifferent Darwinian universe, authenticity is a death sentence.
That is heavy.
But think about it. If Shallan remained her authentic, traumatized self, that weeping child on the floor, she would be dead. She would have been consumed by the political predators around her. Her ability to fracture her psyche, to deliberately suppress her original self and invent entirely new, highly functional personas.
Like her infiltration identity, Veil.
Right, Veil. That is the ultimate evolutionary survival trait. She doesn't heal her brokenness. She weaponizes it. She turns her psychological damage into a utility.
And you see the terrifying efficiency of this when she is betrayed by her mentor, the assassin Tin. Tin discovers who Shallan really is and casually admits she's going to murder her. And what does Shallan do? She doesn't break down. She doesn't panic.
It just flips a switch.
She summons her blade, runs Tin directly through the chest, watches her mentor's eyes burn out and her soul die, and then she just shuts it off. She instantly suppresses the horror. She suppresses the resurfacing trauma of murdering her mother, steps over Tin's corpse, and perfectly maintains her fabricated persona so she can walk out the door and infiltrate a secret society known as the Ghostbloods.
It is chilling how quickly she compartmentalizes cold-blooded murder.
It's psychopathic, almost.
Well, she isn't healing. She is optimizing. She is fracturing herself into more efficient utility. And if we pull back and look at our contemporary world, this is exactly the hidden operating system beneath modern life.
How so? Like with social media?
Yes. Think about AI-driven identity erosion and the rise of synthetic intimacy. Look at how modern humans are structurally forced to curate digital avatars, fracturing their identities across a dozen different platforms just to survive the algorithmic conditioning of social media and the modern economy.
So we are all creating our own versions of Veil.
Exactly. We curate performances of professional success on LinkedIn, performances of political virtue on social media, performances of aesthetic happiness on photo-sharing apps.
While the original self is just gone.
Buried. The original frightened, exhausted self is buried so deep under layers of digital performance that we forget what it looks like. We are marching steadily toward a state of post-human irrelevance where the very concept of a core identity is obsolete.
It just masks all the way down.
Identity is becoming just a series of useful masks swapped out in milliseconds based on the environmental pressures of whatever algorithm we are currently interacting with.
I look at this and I have to challenge you, the listener. We venerate healing and authenticity. But doesn't this text prove that the lie is the only thing that keeps us sane? If the authentic self is just a weeping, paralyzed child overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the world, then the fabrication isn't a moral failing.
No, it's a tool.
It is the only rational way to navigate reality. But it gets much, much darker because Shallan lies to herself to engineer her personal survival. She fractures her own mind to stay alive. What happens when leaders apply that exact same logic to a global population?
That's the terrifying escalation.
Right. What happens when a leader decides to lie to the world, to engineer the survival of the species, no matter the cost?
That brings us to King Caravangian and the concept of the commodification of chaos. Because if Josnin exposes the illusion of power and Shallan exposes the illusion of identity, Taravangian shreds any remaining illusions we might have about morality.
Taravangian is fascinating to me because he isn't some cackling villain in a dark tower. He is an old, seemingly gentle man who is the architect of a global shadow war, and I want to look closely at what he does in the nation of Jakivd.
The succession crisis.
Yes. Jacques is falling apart, and Taravangian intentionally accelerates it. He lets the capital city burn, he allows rival political factions to bleed each other dry in a horrific civil war. But he didn't just stumble into this chaos, he engineered it from the shadows.
He lit the match.
And his masterstroke is how he resolves it. He approaches the dying King Valam, and he manipulates the situation, playing on Valam's fears and angers so perfectly that Valam orders his own illegitimate son Redin to plunge a knife into his heart.
Let's analyze the sheer mechanical brilliance of that manipulation. Why patricide?
Yeah, why go that far?
Because Taravangian understands the mechanics of political legitimacy. By psychologically maneuvering Redin into plunging the knife into his father's chest, Taravangian instantly, irrevocably delegitimizes Redin as a potential rival for the throne.
Because no one wants a king who killed his dad.
No society will accept a known patricide as a king. So Taravangian stands in that room, watching the old man die, calculating the exact, precise political yield of the murder. And once the blood is spilled and the rival is neutralized, Taravangian steps out onto the balcony and seamlessly claims the throne as a, quote, reluctant savior.
He manufactures the disease, allows the population to suffer the horrific symptoms, and then sells them the cure.
At the cost of their total submission, he consolidates absolute power without ever holding the knife himself. It is pure, unadulterated statecraft. He is the apex predator of this text.
But the detail that makes my blood run cold isn't the political math. It's his physical reaction. Taravangian stands over the corpse of the king he just manipulated into suicide, and he weeps. He literally sheds tears.
He cries for him.
He claims to his inner circle that he is cursed with compassion. He genuinely feels sorrow for the thousands of men dying in the streets of the city he set on fire. He prays for their souls, even as he actively, methodically engineers their slaughter. He justifies it all by claiming he has foreseen an impending apocalypse, and the only way to save humanity is to unite them under his absolute rule by any means necessary.
This is the horrific, beating heart of utilitarian morality. Taravangian operates on the belief that morality is a luxury that civilization simply cannot afford when facing extinction. He reduces human lives to a ledger. Thousands dead today to save millions tomorrow.
Just numbers on a page.
But we have to look at how this ideology functions psychologically. The language of the greater good is the ultimate ideological armor. It allows megalomaniacs to sanitize their status hunger.
And we see this mirrored on a smaller, more intimate scale with High Lord Emiram. Emiram is supposed to be the paragon of Alife honor, but he murders Kaladin's entire squad of spearmen men who just saved his life, just so he can steal their magical shard blades.
And then brands Kaladin a slave.
Exactly, to cover up the crime. And how does Emiram sleep at night? He justifies it exactly like Taravangian. He tells himself he needs the weapons more than the spearmen do. He needs them to save the kingdom. It's for the greater good.
Which is precisely why Taravangian weeps. His performance of empathy is not for the victims. It is necessary for his own psychological survival.
Wait, really? You think it's just for him?
Completely. If he doesn't believe in his core that he is a compassionate, burdened savior making hard choices, he has to look in the mirror and face the reality that he is nothing more than a mass murderer. The weeping is a pressure valve for his cognitive dissonance.
But hold on, I want to push back on you here. I am going to defend Taravangian's ugly mouth for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
You're calling him an apex predator, painting him as a monster, masking his status hunger. But the text establishes that the world actually is ending. The apocalypse is real. If humanity is facing literal extinction, isn't Taravangian the only adult in the room?
I wouldn't call him an adult.
But isn't he doing the terrible utilitarian math that no one else has the stomach for? Sometimes, doesn't a leader have to burn a city to save the world?
That is exactly the trap of utilitarianism, and it is a trap you're falling into right now. You are assuming his premise. You are assuming that his absolute rule is the only viable solution. That is the narcissism of the tyrant. Taravangian hasn't deduced that the world needs saving. He has deduced that the world needs Taravangian.
Oh, wow.
He conflates the survival of humanity with his own personal ascension to power. The greater good is simply the rhetorical device he uses to ensure that he is the one sitting on the throne when the dust settles.
And when you map that onto the modern world, It is the exact playbook of the institutions that govern us. Look at modern tech monopolies and algorithmic platforms. They intentionally ignite societal fires.
Every single day.
They design algorithms to maximize engagement through political polarization, body image crises, and mass distraction. They know an enraged, insecure, terrified populace is a highly engaged and highly profitable populace.
They start the fires, and they sell us the digital water to put them out.
Yes, and exactly like Taravangian, modern CEOs perform empathy. They go on apology tours, they testify before Congress with solemn faces, they talk endlessly about connecting the world or protecting democracy,
Weeping crocodile tears.
while operating vast global systems of mass psychological exploitation.
They manufacture the crisis to justify their expansion of power. And the truly terrifying part is that, like Taravangian, many of them genuinely believe their own press releases.
Which makes them more dangerous.
Absolutely. A cynic who knows he is lying can be negotiated with. But a narcissist who believes his atrocities are a divine burden, who believes his monopolistic control is a tragic necessity for the progress of the human race, that person is capable of unlimited destruction.
So if these leaders justify their atrocities by appealing to higher powers, higher callings, and greater goods, it forces us to ask the most dangerous question of all. Where do those higher powers come from? What if the greater good, the moral frameworks, and the gods they claim to serve are just reflections of our own vanity?
This is where we have to delve into the metaphysics of the text. Because the world building in Words of Radiance is not just background flavor. It is a devastating philosophical critique of human meaning-making. We must examine the cognitive realm, known as Shazmar, and the entities that populate it, the Spren.
I need you to explain Shadesmar to me, because the mechanics of it are mind-bending. Jazakolin explains that the physical world we walk around in is layered over this parallel dimension called the cognitive realm.
Right.
In this realm, things exist entirely based on how human minds perceive them. She gives an example of a table. She explains that a physical piece of wood in the real world only manifests as a table in the cognitive realm because human beings have collectively, over time, agreed to perceive it and use it as a table.
Exactly.
If humans didn't exist to define it, it would just be dead wood.
Exactly. It is a universe where human perception dictates metaphysical reality. Now, take that concept and apply it to emotion and thought. That is what Spren are. Spren are essentially living concepts.
Living concepts.
They are fragments of human emotion, like anger, fear, or joy, or human ideas like wind or honor, that have gained actual sentience because of human attention. They do not exist independently of us. They are literally conjured by our focus.
So, if I'm understanding this, it's like a financial market.
Yes.
A stock only has value because millions of people collectively agree it does. If people stop believing in it, the value vanishes. So a Spren in this world is basically the living embodiment of a bank run. It's the collective panic taking on a life of its own.
That is a perfect analogy. A Spren is the metaphysical manifestation of collective human energy. It is a profound demystification of reality. The text is positing a universe that, at its base level, is terrifyingly empty, cold, and indifferent.
It's just a void.
Just a void. And in response to that unbearable void, humanity projected its own neuroses, fears, and ideals into the environment, literally manifesting parasites, the Spren that feed on human emotion and attention to survive.
And Josna, who is an atheist scholar in a highly religious world, takes this to its absolute most radioactive conclusion. She looks at the actual gods of this world. Massive entities known as honor, the almighty, or cultivation, whom entire nations worship and die for.
The foundation of their entire moral framework.
Yes. And she postulates that they are not divine creators who forged the universe. They are just massive emotion or nature Spren. They are primeval, foundational human ideas that we fed with so much worship, blood, and attention over thousands of years that they grew into massive, godlike entities.
It's humanity worshiping its own echo.
Humanity isn't worshiping the divine. Humanity is worshiping a funhouse mirror reflection of its own psychology.
Which means religion, in the context of this text, is stripped of all spiritual mysticism. It is revealed as a flawless, mechanical system of social control. The character Kaladin, who goes from being a soldier to a slave, wrestle with the crushing hypocrisy of the dominant Vorin religion.
He sees right through it eventually.
He does. He looks at the theology and realizes it is perfectly designed to maintain the economic and military hierarchy. He notes the inherent rigged contradiction. Soldiers are glorified, but don't get too ambitious or we'll lock you away. Don't get revenge upon the king, but do get revenge on the Parshendi.
Keep your head down and fight who we tell you to fight.
Exactly. The religion provides the exact psychological armor necessary to keep the lower classes perfectly pacified, striving for an afterlife while remaining completely unaware that they are just meat for the elite's grinder in this life.
The physical representation of this is terrifying. When Jasna accidentally falls into Shazmar, the cognitive realm, she doesn't find a spiritual heaven. It is described as an endless, suffocating, dark ocean of glass beads. Every single bead represents a human thought, a concept, or an object.
Just millions of them.
She starts sinking, nearly drowning under the sheer weight of millions of beads. It is the most visceral, literal manifestation of humanity, drowning in its own mental constructs. We are suffocating in the sea of our own fabricated meaning.
And if you extrapolate that to the modern era, this is the hidden operating system beneath our entire culture. We construct massive ideological, symbolic systems to shield ourselves from our insignificance. Capitalism, political tribalism, progressivism, nationalism, the stock market.
These are our spren.
They are our spren. They are concepts we entirely invented out of thin air, but we have fed them so much attention, so much rage, and so much emotional energy that they now dictate our reality. They rule over us. We are evolving rapidly toward hyperreal simulation cultures where actual tangible meaning evaporates because deep down in the back of our minds we realize we invented all the rules.
We are drowning in the beeves of our own algorithms.
We are.
I want you, the listener, to stop and really consider the weight of this. If our deepest spiritual and societal beliefs are just sporent, if they're just ideas we fed until they took on a life of their own and started feeding on us, what happens when we stop feeding the algorithms of our current era?
That's the terrifying part.
If we collectively stop believing in the fiat currency, if we stop participating in the political theater, if we stop feeding our outrage to the digital platforms, does our reality cease to exist? Do we just fall into the void?
We do. Because beneath the performance, beneath the scaffolding, there is nothing. That is the existential terror the text exposes, the terror that drives every character.
They're all just pretending.
The Alethi are desperately performing civilization, Tarvangian is desperately performing savior, and Shallan is desperately performing sanity, because the alternative is acknowledging the horrifying truth that they are just hairless apes on a rock, hurtling through a meaningless void, committing violence against each other to secure temporary resources.
Let's pull all of this together. We promised a merciless dissection today, and the source material demands nothing less. Words of Radiance is not a story about heroes saving the world from darkness. When you strip away the aesthetic, it is a forensic investigation of broken humans using lies, violence, and manufactured gods to justify their survival.
And we must conclude by rejecting the sentimental fantasy of a collective awakening. Humanity is not going to suddenly realize our systems are illusions, hold hands, and build a utopia.
No, that's a fairy tale.
The logical extreme of the trajectory outlined in this text, which is perfectly mirrored in our world, is a future of highly engineered dependency. Populations will be increasingly anesthetized by digital comfort and synthetic intimacy. We will be exactly like the Alethi in their war camps.
Playing trivial games for imaginary wealth.
While the infrastructure of the world burns down around us, we're marching blindly into an evolutionary bottleneck, governed by algorithms that feed on our outrage, hiding behind avatars that mask our true broken selves.
We started this deep dive talking about the skyscraper, the illusion of the steel foundation. You walk past it and you trust the architecture because it is infinitely easier than acknowledging the rust. But the rust is spreading. It is eating through the pillars.
It is.
So I leave you with this. Consider the veil you wore today. Consider the psychological armor you put on just to interact with the world. Consider the corporate, social, or political ideologies that you fed with your emotional energy. Consider the algorithms you allowed to feed on your attention. You think you are the author of your identity, but you are just the host organism. When the collapse finally comes, when the collective hallucination falters and the painted rust shatters, will your lies be strong enough to save you?